All right. Here's another part. I haven't talked about this much on the podcast or on the courses before, but it's going to show up in the new content. It's like once you sort of appreciate part of the value of the rhetorical tradition and the dialectical tradition, then you sort of see, okay, now here's a useful frame. Argumentation isn't just about communicating like a message that has a certain linguistic structure. It's about performing a kind of action. The giving and receiving of arguments or persuasive speech is a kind of act. And thinking about argumentation and the broader category of persuasive speech, or speech at all, as a set of speech acts is a very powerful framing model. And the key idea here is that a speech act is something that has causal consequences. It has multiple levels. At one level, you have the content of what you're saying, and on the other level, you're actually doing something with a speech act. You're performing certain kinds of actions that can be socially recognized actions, like when you say, I promise that I'll pick you up at 8 o'clock. The act of promising is a speech act, which is different than simply the content of what you're saying. In saying I promise, you're performing a kind of act. Yeah. There's also the level of the causal impact of your words on audiences. What affected you? Like if your goal is in giving a speech is to rouse the troops, that's a certain kind of act that you're trying to achieve, independent of the words you're using. What you're trying to do, the intention is to get the troops to be whipped up, or to give our coach giving a pep talk. Your goal is to get them inspired and motivated so they'll perform better in their environment. That's a context of the speech act, independent of the actual words and the meanings of the words that you're actually using. So this helps to frame a question. Not a bad question to ask, but it's the wrong question if you're looking for the bigger picture. So the wrong question is, have I said what I wanted to say in the way that I wanted to say it? And that's to think about communication too much as an act of information transmission, like the message being sent. And what it does is thinking about the speaker and the argument as the thing that you are transmitting to your audience. And if only you're focused on having the argument contain the structure that you want it to contain. Oh, the premise is good. Was I clear? Did I include everything? Did I include the objections to responses, whatever? Did it capture what I wanted to say? Then nothing wrong with that. But then you're leaving out an important part of this picture, which is thinking about how your audience is going to interact with that. How are they going to respond to that? What's the uptake of that? Whereas if you think about this question, what effect will my communication have on my audience, broadly construed? Then that forces you to look at the big picture. I'm speaking, and through the act of speaking, I'm creating an interaction with an audience with whom I have some kind of relationship. And what you want them to have is a positive response to what you're saying. So their uptake, do they understand it? Is it clear to them? Is it persuasive to them? Is it troubling to them? So thinking along those lines, and working backwards will help you structure the kind of argument, the kind of speech that is going to be most effective when you're thinking along the lines of what's the impact that I want to have on the audience. Is a crucial question to framing this. And it is different from this question here about, have I said everything I wanted to say? Because then that's kind of speaker-centric. Whereas if I think about what's the effect on my audience, that's more audience-centric. And the role of the audience in structuring what it means for an argument to be actually persuasive is crucial. But there's a lot more to say about this. For example, this part here. You can have multiple audiences. And when Trump gives a speech, right, at a rally, he's got audiences, the people in front of him. He's got people who are watching on TV at home. He's got the media. Thinking about the impact of your speech through all these different audiences has a complicating effect on thinking about, on strategizing what you want to say and how you want to say it. But it's a crucial part of effective communication. If you know what it is you're doing and you're clear about your goals, then you can think about strategy, but goals, strategy, and tactics in a different way. That you just don't get that. If you're thinking along the sort of traditional information transmission way, the questions you're asking about Euro speech are too narrow. Okay, any reactions to this little slide?
I was going to ask, when this may be a silly question, but you often use the word speech and speak, but I assume all of this applies to any form of communication, right?
Yeah. This is about communication. It's kind of one of the reasons why I have a separate course now in the Argumentation Dojo course. The list of courses, I want to do a course on reasoning, do a course on knowledge, a course on communication, and a course on persuasion. And a fifth course, which is sort of the Argument Ninja Dojo philosophy that's sort of supposed to tie them all together. But having a specific course on communication, it's become more clear to me that there are distinctive elements that I haven't talked about enough in the past that are important. So a place we're talking about speech acts and about what it means to communicate in a way in which you're understood, where the goal is to be understood and also be effective for writing, for speaking, for producing any kind of symbolic content, frankly. Creating, for example, images, where you want an image to have a persuasive impact or have a certain kind of influence. There's actually a literature on nonverbal argumentation. You have to back away and think about it in terms of audience reactions to and their interpretation of messaging embodied in all sorts of symbolic artifacts and structures. Again, I'll just emphasize, when you study formal logic in university, there's so much emphasis on the propositional content of assertions and what it means for an assertion to be true or false, for example, which is good. That's really important. But this other question about the conditions under which speech is received positively or negatively is never addressed in that course. And that's just a huge black hole.